When people talk about the origins of the global economy, they often start in Europe. Banks. Empires. Stock exchanges. But what if I told you that long before Europe dominated global trade, another continent controlled one of the world's most valuable resources? We're talking about gold. Not in small amounts, but in quantities so vast that entire economies, thousands of miles away, depended on it. And that continent was Africa. This isn't a story about colonial exploitation. This is the story of how ancient African gold reshaped global markets, funded foreign empires, and influenced the world centuries before Europeans arrived on its shores. So, forget the narratives you've been taught. Let's uncover the real history of how Africa's wealth built the world. Between the 8th and 16th centuries, West Africa was the engine of the global gold market. It produced the vast majority of the gold circulating in the Old World, that's Europe, the Middle East, and North Africa, regions that are now modern-day Mali, Ghana, Burkina Faso, and Senegal were home to incredibly rich gold fields. But what made African gold so powerful wasn't just its abundance, it was the control. African rulers and empires meticulously regulated who could mine the gold, who could trade it, and where it could go. Foreign merchants couldn't just walk in and take it. Gold moved through sophisticated, African-led systems. It was a managed resource, and that management gave Africa immense economic power. One of the first great powers to harness this wealth was the Empire of Ghana, and no, that's not the same as modern-day Ghana. This medieval empire was a true superpower. It didn't directly control the gold mines, but it brilliantly controlled the trade. It sat at the crossroads of two vital commodities, gold flowing from the south and salt coming down from the Sahara Desert. Merchants from North Africa and the Middle East, eager for gold, couldn't just go to the source. They had to trade at the empire's borders, and they did so on Ghana's terms. This strategic control of trade made the Empire of Ghana one of the richest states in the medieval world. It was a model of economic dominance that would set the stage for even bigger empires to follow. After the Empire of Ghana's influence faded, the Mali Empire rose to take its place, becoming an even bigger player on the world stage. Mali didn't just control the trade routes. It controlled the gold mines themselves, with legendary cities like Timbuktu as its commercial hubs. The empire managed a sprawling network that stretched across the Sahara. Gold from Mali wasn't just a local treasure, it was a global currency. It moved north into Africa, across the Mediterranean, and into the heart of Europe. By the 14th century, European economies were heavily reliant on this West African gold. They needed it to mint their coins and stabilize their own currencies. This wasn't an isolated continent. Africa was at the very center of the global economic network. And if you need one single event to prove Africa's economic influence, look no further than Mansa Musa's pilgrimage to Mecca in 1324. The ruler of the Mali Empire, Mansa Musa, was one of the wealthiest individuals in human history. As he traveled, his caravan included thousands of people and an unbelievable amount of gold. When he passed through Cairo, he was so generous that he gave away enough gold to completely flood the local market. The result? The price of gold in Cairo plummeted and didn't recover for over a decade. This isn't a myth or a legend. It was recorded by contemporary Arab historians who witnessed it. It's one of the clearest examples in history of African wealth directly causing an economic shock in a foreign market, a shock that was felt across the Mediterranean. So, where does Europe fit into this picture? For centuries, European states simply didn't have enough gold of their own. Their economies were hungry for it. African gold was the fuel that powered their growth. It funded European trade with the East, it supported the rise of powerful banking systems, and it enabled them to expand their minting of gold coins, which was crucial for economic stability. This deep-seated dependency on African gold is what ultimately drove European exploration. They didn't discover gold in Africa, they went searching for the source of the wealth that Africa already controlled, and that they desperately needed. If this history sounds different from what you learned in school, there's a reason for that. Colonial narratives systematically reframed Africa as a continent that was poor, undeveloped, and dependent on Europe. Acknowledging Africa's long history as a global economic engine simply didn't fit with the justification for colonialism. To maintain that narrative, Africa's powerful empires were downplayed. Its complex trade networks were ignored. Its immense wealth was either forgotten or wrongly credited to outside influence. The history was deliberately erased and rewritten, but the facts, preserved in historical records from Africa, the Middle East, and Europe, tell a very different story. The truth is, Africa was never outside of history, it was actively shaping it. For centuries, African empires regulated international trade, they stabilized global currencies with their gold, and they influenced markets thousands of miles away. This wasn't a story of accidental wealth, it was a story of managed, structured, and defended economic power. Africa wasn't a passive continent waiting to be discovered. It was a continent of powerful kingdoms and empires, deeply connected to the rest of the world and influencing it in profound ways. So, the next time you think about the foundations of the global economy, remember that the story doesn't start in the banking halls of Europe, it runs through the golden heart of Africa. Ancient African gold did more than just build African empires, it funded the rise of distant powers and shaped the world we live in today. If this video challenged what you were taught, that was the entire point. Subscribe for more history that's grounded in evidence, not myth. Thanks for watching.